The cardboard box felt wrong. That was Darren West's first thought as he lifted it from the dusty corner of the garage. On that April morning in 2014, not heavy enough to be tools, not light enough to be empty, something shifted inside with a sound that made his stomach turn, a sound like dried leaves, but heavier, more substantial. Just old clothes, he told himself. Maybe Christmas decorations Megan forgot about. But Megan had been gone for 3 years now. 3 years since the divorce. 3 years since she'd packed up and left this house on East 200 North in Pleasant Grove, Utah Street, where children still played until the streetlights came on, where neighbors knew each other's names, where the mountains stood like guardians. Against the horizon, the box had been wrapped in plastic, deliberately, carefully. Darren's hands trembled as he peeled back the layers. The smell hit him, first musty, sweet, wrong. Then he saw it. Small, too small. Wrapped in a shirt he recognized, one of Megan's old t-shirts from when they were young, when they were happy, when they thought they knew what their future held. Foot, tiny, perfect. Still, the scream that tore from his throat wasn't human. It was primal, the sound of a soul recognizing horror beyond comprehension. His legs gave out. The concrete floor of the garage rushed up to meet his knees. And still, he couldn't look away from what he'd uncovered. This isn't real. This can't be real. But it was. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. She'd taken thousands of calls. Heart attacks, car accidents, domestic disputes, but nothing like what she was about to hear.
Pleasant Grove Police?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Can I have an officer come to this address?
And your name?
My name's Darren West. I just found something in my garage. I think it's a miscarriage.
Can you be more specific? What do you mean by a miscarriage you found?
I have no idea. Just please send an officer up here.
It sounds like you may need medical.
It's been wrapped up in a plastic bag and it stinks.
Okay, what is it?
It's a little baby.
Darren's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Silence. Then, sir, can you repeat that? A baby in a box. It's been there a long time. The dispatcher's training kicked in. Location, status of the caller. Immediate danger. But her voice betrayed a tremor. Sir, are you safe? Is anyone else there with you? No, I'm alone. My ex-wife, this was her house. Oh God, there might be more. There might be more. Those 4 words would haunt Pleasant Grove for years to come. To understand the horror, you must first understand the ordinary. Megan Huntsman had been beautiful once. Not the kind of beauty that stops traffic, but the quiet kind that grows on you, brown eyes that crinkled when she laughed, hair that caught the sunlight just right, a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. She'd met Darren West when they were both young, both full of dreams that seemed achievable in a town where the American dream still felt within reach. They married in 1991. Young love. Real love, or so Darren thought. Their first daughter, Sierra, came along like a blessing. Then another daughter, then another. The house on East 200 North, filled with the chaos of family life toys scattered across floors, crayon marks on walls, that Megan would sigh over but never quite get around to painting. The constant soundtrack of children's laughter and tears, and everything in between. But somewhere between the second and third child, something shifted. When did I stop recognizing her? Darren would ask himself later, searching his memory for the moment his wife became a stranger. Maybe it was when she started using methamphetamine. The drug crept into their lives like fog, invisible at first, then everywhere. Her eyes grew hollow. Her laughter became rare, then extinct. She'd disappear for hours, sometimes days, leaving Darren to manage the children, to make excuses to neighbors who asked if everything was all right. "Just tired," he'd say. You know how it is with kids, but he didn't know. Not really. Not the full truth. Between 1996 and 2006, Megan Huntsman was pregnant 8 times. 8 times she felt life quicken within her. 8 times she hid the growing evidence beneath loose clothing, beneath lies, beneath a facade of normalcy that fooled everyone, including her husband who shared her bed. How? The question torments anyone who hears this story. How does a woman hide 8 pregnancies from her husband? Megan was small, barely 5 feet tall. She'd always been thin, but the meth kept her skeletal. When she did gain weight, she blamed it on depression, on stress, on anything but the truth. She wore baggy clothes, oversized t-shirt that had become her uniform, sweatpants that hid the changes in her body, and Darren was working constantly, pulling double shifts to support their growing family, to pay for a life that was spiraling beyond their means. He'd come home, exhausted, fall into bed, wake before dawn to do it all again. When intimacy became rare, then non-existent, he blamed himself. The stress, the kids, the normal erosion of passion that he thought happened to every marriage. He never suspected that his wife was living a double life measured in trimesters. April 10th, 1996. Megan remembered the date because it was 2 days after her daughter's birthday. Party. The house still had balloons tied to chairs, cake crumbs ground into the carpet. Normal. Everything had seemed so normal. The contractions started while Darren was at work. She'd been through labor before 3 times with living children, who now played in the next room, oblivious to their mother's agony. She knew what was happening. She knew what was coming. She locked herself in the bathroom. "I can't do this again," she thought as the pain crashed over her in waves. "I can't afford another child. Darren will leave me. He'll take the kids. Everyone will know what I am, what she was, in her mind, was a failure, a drug addict, a woman who couldn't stop herself from getting pregnant, who couldn't provide for the children she already had, who couldn't be the mother, the wife, the person everyone expected her to be. The baby came quickly, too quickly. A girl, perfect and small, who gasped once, twice, then fell silent when Megan's hands closed around her throat. It was mercy, she would tell herself later. It was kindness. Better this than a life of suffering. She wrapped the body in a towel, then in plastic bags, then placed it in a box she found in the garage, labeled it decorations in black Sharpie, stacked other boxes on top. Then she cleaned the bathroom, made dinner for her living children, smiled when Darren came home and asked about her day. "Fine," she said. Everything was fine. After the first time, it got easier. That's the horrible truth that Megan would later confess to investigators. Each death became more routine, more mechanical. A problem to be solved, a secret to be kept. 1996, the first baby, a girl. 1997, a boy who looked like Darren. 1998, another girl, born on a summer night when the rest of the family was at a church. Barbecue, 1999, twins, though one was already gone when born. 2000, a boy she almost kept, almost took to the hospital, almost saved. 2001, nothing, a year of reprieve. 2002, another girl, born and gone in the span of an hour. 2003, nothing again. Hope, maybe, that it was over. 2004, the 7th baby, gender unknown, too small, too early. 2005, nothing. 2006, the last one. A boy born on a cold February night while snow fell outside. Each time, the ritual was the same. The bathroom, the towel, the plastic, the box, the garage that became a tomb. And each time, Megan returned to her life as if nothing had happened. Made breakfast, helped with homework, attended parent-teacher conferences where teachers praised her living children, never knowing that their mother was harboring the dead by 2011. The weight of her secrets had become unbearable. Megan's drug use escalated. She'd disappear for days, leaving her teenage daughters to care for themselves. The house fell into disrepair, dishes piled in the sink, laundry mountains in every room. A smell that neighbors attributed to poor housekeeping, but was really the stench of a soul rotting from within. Darren filed for divorce. He'd had enough of the drugs, the lies, the woman his wife had become. But even then, even as lawyers divided their assets and custody arrangements were made, he never suspected the truth. How could he? What mind could conceive of such horror hiding in plain sight? Megan moved out, leaving the house to Darren, but she left something else behind. 8 small boxes in the garage, stacked neatly in the corner, waiting. For 3 years, they waited. The day of discovery continued in a blur of sirens and uniforms. Pleasant Grove police arrived first, then detectives, then the coroner, then the media, drawn like moths to the flame of unimaginable tragedy. The quiet street became a circus of yellow tape and flashing lights. One by one, the boxes were removed from the garage, each one photographed, catalogued, treated with the reverence due to the dead, no matter how small, no matter how long forgotten. 7 boxes, 7 babies, 7 lives that ended before they began. The 8th baby, investigators would later learn, had been stillborn, the only natural death among them, though Megan had hidden that body too. Unable, or unwilling to distinguish between her crimes and her tragedies. Inside the house, Darren sat with investigators. His world collapsed into a single, impossible truth. The woman he'd loved, the mother of his children, was a serial killer. "I don't understand," he said over and over. "How did I not know? How did I not see?" But Detective Dan Roberts, a veteran of 20 years who thought he'd seen everything, had no answers, only questions, and a growing certainty that this case would haunt him forever. Megan Huntsman was living in a trailer park in West Valley City when they came for her. She'd been expecting them, in a way. For 3 years, she'd waited for the knock on the door, the revelation, the end of her secret. When she saw the police, cars pull up, she didn't run. She didn't resist. She simply said, "I know why you're here." At the station, she confessed everything. The interrogation room was small, windowless, with walls the color of old bones. Megan sat across from Detective Roberts, her hands folded in her lap like a child in the principal's office. She looked smaller than her 5 feet, diminished, as if the weight of her secrets had compressed her very being. "Tell me about the first one," Roberts said gently, and she did. In a voice devoid of emotion, she recounted each birth, each death, each tiny body wrapped and stored like unwanted belongings. She spoke of strangulation and suffocation as if describing household chores matter, fact, routine, necessary. "Why?" Roberts asked, the question that everyone would ask, that no one could truly answer. "I was high," Megan said. "I couldn't afford them. Darren would have left me. I couldn't." she trailed off. There was no ending to that sentence that could make sense of the senseless. While Megan sat in jail, her 3 living daughters grappled with a truth that threatened to destroy them. Sierra, the oldest, was 23 when the news broke. She'd been at work when a co-worker showed her the headline on their phone: "Utah mother arrested for killing 7 babies. That's my mum," she said, and then collapsed. The middle daughter, 21, locked herself in her apartment for a week, unable to face a world that now knew her as the daughter of a monster. The youngest, just 18, still in high school, walked into class to find everyone staring, whispering, their eyes full of horror and pity and morbid curiosity. We lived in that house, they thought. We played in that garage. We walked past those boxes every day. How do you reconcile the mother who packed your school lunches with the woman who murdered your siblings? How do you mourn brothers and sisters you never knew existed? How do you trust your own memories when everything you believed was built on lies? The daughters would later release a statement through their attorney. We are devastated by the news of our mother's actions. We knew nothing of this. We are victims too. But the world is cruel to the children of monsters. The sins of the mother visited upon the daughters forever and ever. Amen. Megan Huntsman pleaded guilty to 6 counts of murder in February 2015. The courtroom was packed. Media from around the world, residents of Pleasant Grove who still couldn't believe this had happened in their town. And in the front row, Darren West, looking like he'd aged 20 years in 10 months. Megan entered in shackles, orange jumpsuit hanging off her skeletal frame. She kept her eyes down, never looking at Darren, never acknowledging the gasps from the gallery when the prosecutor described each murder in clinical detail. The defendant gave birth in her bathroom, the prosecutor said. She then strangled or suffocated each baby immediately after birth. She wrapped them in cloth, placed them in plastic bags, put them in boxes, and stored them in her garage. She did this 6 times over 10 years, all while living a seemingly normal life. When it came time for Megan to speak, she stood slowly, as if her bones might break from the effort. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I was so high. On drugs, I hardly remember. I know that's no excuse. I know what I did was heinous. I accept my punishment." 5 words. I was so high on drugs. As if methamphetamine could explain the unexplainable. As if addiction could excuse the unexcusable. The judge, a grandmother herself, struggled to maintain composure as she delivered the sentence. 5 years to life for each count, to run concurrently. The possibility of parole, but not the probability. Not for a woman who had turned motherhood into murder. Pleasant Grove tried to heal, but some wounds don't close. The house on East 200 North stood empty for months. No one wanted to buy the house where 7 babies had been hidden in the garage. Eventually, a young couple from out of state, unaware of the history, made an offer. They lasted 6 months before moving out, claiming the house felt wrong. Though they couldn't say why, Darren West disappeared from public view. Some say he moved to another state, changed his name, tried to build a life free from the shadow of his ex-wife's crimes. Others claim he still lives in Utah, a ghost of a man haunted by the children he never knew. He'd lost, the 3 daughters scattered like seeds on the wind. New names, new cities, new lives built on the ruins of the old. But you can't outrun your DNA. Can't escape the face in the mirror that looks just a little too much like the mother who made headlines around the world. And Megan. Megan sits in the Utah State Prison, where she will likely die. She works in the laundry, attends therapy, claims to have found God. She writes letters to her daughters that are returned unopened. She dreams, she says, of the babies, not nightmares, but dreams where they're alive, where they're growing up, where they forgive her. But the dead don't forgive. They simply wait, patient and silent, for justice or judgment, or simply to be remembered. How? Did no one notice? This is the question that torments Pleasant Grove, that should torment us all. 8 pregnancies, 7 murders, 10 years, and no one knew. Not Darren, who shared Megan's bed. Not the daughters, who shared her home. Not the neighbors, who shared friendly waves across driveways. Not the doctors, who must have treated her at some point during those years. Not the teachers, coaches, church members, grocery store clerks, mail carriers, the entire infrastructure of a community that prides itself on looking out for one another. The truth is that we see what we expect to see. We expect mothers to love their children. We expect marriages to have problems, but not secrets of this magnitude. We expect that evil, when it comes, will announce itself with obvious signs, not hide behind the facade of a tired mother in an oversized T-shirt. Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic psychologist who studied the case, offers this chilling observation. Megan Huntsman succeeded because she appeared to fail in expected ways. Her drug addiction, her deteriorating marriage, her struggles with poverty, these were visible problems that masked the invisible horror. People saw a woman in crisis and offered sympathy, not suspicion. But there's another question, darker and more disturbing. How many more Megan Huntsmans are out there? The FBI estimates that hundreds of babies die each year in America under suspicious circumstances, their deaths unreported, their bodies never found. They call it neonaticide, the killing of an infant within 24 hours of birth. It's more common than we want to believe, more hidden than we can imagine in France. They have baby hatches, places where desperate mothers can leave unwanted newborns safely and anonymously. In America, we have safe haven laws allowing parents to surrender infants at hospitals or fire stations without prosecution. But these solutions require acknowledgement of the pregnancy, admission of the birth, action that women like Megan Huntsman are psychologically incapable of taking. To understand Megan Huntsman, we must venture into the darkest corners of the human psyche. Neonaticide is different from other forms of child murder. It's often committed by women who have dissociated from their pregnancies, who experience what psychologists call pregnancy denial or concealed pregnancy. These women don't prepare for birth, don't seek prenatal care, don't acknowledge even to themselves that they're carrying a child. When labor comes, it arrives like a crisis, not a culmination. The baby is not a person, but a problem, not a life, but a threat to the life the woman is desperately trying to maintain. Add methamphetamine to this psychological storm, and you have a perfect recipe for tragedy. Meth destroys empathy, erodes judgment, transforms users into strangers to themselves. It's a drug that makes the unthinkable possible, the impossible routine. But drugs alone don't explain Megan Huntsman. Millions of people struggle with addiction without becoming killers. There was something else, something broken in her long before the first hit of meth. Something that allowed her to hold her newborn children and choose death over life, silence over screams, secrets over salvation. Perhaps it was her own childhood, though details remain scarce. Perhaps it was untreated mental illness, postpartum psychosis multiplied by 8. Perhaps it was simply evil. That old-fashioned word we use when psychology fails to provide adequate explanations. Or perhaps sand, this is the most terrifying possibility. There was nothing special about Megan Huntsman at all. Perhaps she was simply an ordinary woman pushed to extraordinary extremes, making monstrous choices that seemed, in the moment, like the only choices available. The Huntsman case sent shockwaves far beyond Pleasant Grove. Utah legislators introduced bills requiring hospitals to better track pregnancies and births. Child welfare agencies revised their protocols for investigating suspicious circumstances. The medical community grappled with the ethical implications of mandatory reporting versus patient privacy. But the most profound impact was on the thousands of women who saw themselves in Megan Huntsman, not in her crimes, but in her desperation. I was Megan, wrote one anonymous mother in an online support group. Pregnant, addicted, terrified. The only difference is that someone found me in time. Someone got me help. Someone saved my baby from becoming another secret in another garage. Crisis pregnancy centers reported a surge in calls after the story broke. Women who had been hiding pregnancies, who had been considering desperate measures, who had been walking the knife's edge between crisis and catastrophe, reached out for help. If Megan Huntsman's legacy could include even one life saved, would that matter? Can redemption be found in prevention? Can horror serve as warning? These are questions without easy answers, philosophy born from tragedy, hope excavated from the deepest despair today. Pleasant Grove looks much the same as it did before April 12, 2014. The mountains still stand guard. Children still play until the streetlights come on. Neighbors still know each other's names. But something has changed, something indefinable but undeniable. We're more watchful now, says Mary Patterson, who has lived in Pleasant Grove for 40 years. Not suspicious. Exactly, but aware. Aware that terrible things can happen behind closed doors. Aware that the person next to you in the grocery store might be carrying unbearable secrets. The house on East 200 North has been sold twice more since the young couple fled. The current owners, fully aware of the history, have tried to reclaim it. New garage, new paint, new everything. But children still cross the street rather than walk past. Pizza delivery drivers still hesitate at the door. The house stands as a monument to the unknowable, the unthinkable, the unforgettable. At the local cemetery. There are no graves for the 7 babies. Their bodies were cremated after the trial, their ashes scattered by the state in a location that remains confidential. They have no headstones, no names, no place for mourners to leave flowers. But sometimes, people leave toys at the entrance to the cemetery, small gestures for small souls, acknowledgement of lives that barely began, that ended before they could truly start, that mattered despite their brevity. Darren West carries a weight that few can imagine. He was their father. Those 7 babies who died in secret, who were hidden in his own garage, who were murdered by the woman he loved, they were his children. His DNA ran through their tiny veins. His features might have been reflected in their faces, had they lived to open their eyes. I think about them every day, he told a friend, in a rare moment of openness. I wonder who they would have been. I wonder if they would have looked like Sierra, like their sisters. I wonder if I could have saved them if I'd just noticed. The guilt of the unknowing father is a particular kind of torture. Every memory is now suspect. Every moment re-examined for clues he should have seen. The time Megan locked herself in the bathroom for hours, claiming stomach flu. The boxes in the garage, she insisted, were just old stuff, not worth going through. The weight she gained and lost, that he attributed to her struggles with addiction. How many times had he walked past those boxes? How many times had he been mere feet from his dead children, never knowing they were there? Some nights, he dreams of opening the boxes years earlier, of finding the babies still alive, of rushing them to hospitals where miraculous doctors somehow save them. All. He wakes from these dreams, sobbing, reaching for children who were never allowed to exist, mourning lives that were ended before he knew they'd begun. Sierra, Sabrina, and Sam, names changed for privacy, have had to rebuild their lives from scorched earth. They've changed their names legally, moved to different states, created elaborate fictional histories to explain their origins to new friends, new boyfriends, new lives built on necessary lies. But the truth has a way of surfacing, especially in the age of Google. I was on a third date, Sam recalls, when he got quiet and asked if my mother was the woman from Utah. I knew immediately what he meant. There's only one woman from Utah that people remember. The daughters have each processed their trauma differently. Sierra threw herself into advocacy work, volunteering with organizations that support children of incarcerated parents. Sabrina retreated into academia, pursuing a psychology degree to understand the mother she thought she knew. Sam chose radical reinvention, moving across the world, learning new languages, becoming someone entirely new. But they all share the same fundamental struggle. How do you mourn siblings you never knew existed? How do you grieve relationships that were murdered before they could form? How do you reconcile the mother who read you bedtime stories with the woman who murdered 7 babies in the bathroom down the hall? She was a good mother to us, Sierra says, and then immediately corrects herself. No, that's not right. She kept us alive. In her twisted way, maybe that was love. Or maybe we were just lucky. Maybe we were born at the right time, when she still had hope, before the drugs took everything. Every true crime story seeks a why, a reason, an explanation that makes the incomprehensible somehow logical. With Megan Huntsman, the why remains elusive. Was it the drugs? Methamphetamine certainly played a role, but it doesn't explain the calculated nature of her crimes, the decade-long deception, the ability to function normally between murders. Was it mental illness? Possibly, but no diagnosis quite fits. Postpartum. Psychosis doesn't last 10 years. Personality disorders don't fully account for the selective nature of her violence, killing some children while raising others. Was it poverty? The family struggled financially, but millions of poor mothers don't murder their babies. Poverty might explain desperation, but not systematic killing. Was it fear? Fear of Darren's reaction, fear of losing her living children, fear of judgment. Perhaps, but fear alone doesn't sustain a decade of murder. The truth is that human evil sometimes defies explanation. Sometimes the why is a web of factors so complex, so intertwined, so deeply buried in the psyche that even the perpetrator can't fully explain their actions. I don't know why I did it, Megan told investigators. I wish I could explain it. I wish I understood it myself. This absence of understanding is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the case. If we can't understand it, how can we prevent it? If we can't explain it, how can we see it coming? If Megan Huntsman herself doesn't know why she became a monster, what hope do the rest of us have of recognizing the monsters among us? As I write this, Megan Huntsman has been in prison for nearly a decade. She's 50 years old now, her brown hair gone grey, her face lined with the weight of her crimes. She works, she prays, she attends therapy. She is, by all accounts, a model prisoner. But can someone who has done what she did ever truly be rehabilitated? Can a woman who murdered 7 of her own children ever be considered safe? Can redemption exist for crimes that violate the most fundamental taboos of human society? These are questions that will be answered, perhaps, when she comes up for parole, when a board of strangers must decide if Megan Huntsman deserves a second chance at freedom. Knowing that 7 babies never got a first chance at life, the families of Pleasant Grove are divided. Some believe in forgiveness, in the possibility of redemption, in the Christian mandate to love even the most broken among us. Others believe that some crimes are unforgivable, that some acts place you beyond the reach of mercy, that Megan Huntsman forfeited her right to freedom the moment she wrapped her hands around her first baby's throat. The story of Megan Huntsman forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about motherhood, about women, about the secrets we keep and the facades we maintain. We want to believe that maternal instinct is universal, that all mothers naturally love and protect their children. The Huntsman case shatters this comfortable myth, forces us to acknowledge that motherhood can be a burden too heavy for some to bear, that not all women who give birth are equipped to give life. We want to believe that evil announces itself, that monsters look like monsters, that we would recognize a killer if we met one. But Megan Huntsman looked like a tired mother. She looked like someone who needed help, not someone who needed to be stopped. She looked terrifyingly ordinary. And perhaps that's the real horror of this story. Not just what Megan Huntsman did, but what her crimes say about our collective blindness, our willingness to look away from uncomfortable truths, our failure to see what's right in front of us. In Pleasant Grove, in Utah, in America, in the world, there are other women like Megan Huntsman, women pregnant and desperate, women hiding and afraid, women one crisis away from an unthinkable choice. Some of them will get help. Some of them will find resources, support, a way forward that doesn't end in tragedy. But some won't. Some will. Give birth alone in bathrooms, in bedrooms, in places where no one can hear the cries that are silenced too soon. Some will wrap small bodies in towels, in plastic, in secrets that might not be discovered for years, decades, or ever. This is the darkness that exists alongside our everyday lives. This is the horror that hides behind normal doors, on normal streets, in normal towns. What would you have done if you were Darren West? Would you have noticed the signs? The weight gain and loss? The locked bathroom doors? The boxes in the garage you were told not to touch? If you were the daughters living in that house, walking past that garage every day, would you have sensed something wrong? Would you have asked questions? Would you have looked inside those boxes? If you were the neighbors, would you have been more insistent when Megan seemed to struggle? Would you have pushed past polite boundaries to offer help? Would you have recognized a woman drowning in plain sight? What would you have done if it were your children, your city, your neighbor, your family member standing at the precipice of unthinkable choices? We all want to believe we would have known, would have acted, would have prevented this tragedy. But the truth is that evil often comes disguised as ordinary struggle. Monsters often look like tired mothers, and the unthinkable happens while we're busy thinking about everything else. The story of Megan Huntsman isn't just about one woman's crimes. It's about all of our failures to see, to help, to prevent. It's about the secrets that fester in silence, the desperation that drives people to unimaginable acts, the thin line between ordinary and evil that we cross without even knowing it. If this story shook something in you, share it. Not for the sensationalism, not for the horror, but for the awareness. Share it so that somewhere, someone might recognize the signs. So that somewhere, a desperate woman might reach out for help instead of reaching for a more terrible solution. So that somewhere, those 7 babies who never got to live might save a life through the telling of their deaths. Stories like this need light not because we enjoy the darkness, but because only in illumination can we see what lurks in the shadows. Only in acknowledgement can we begin to prevent. Only in understanding, however incomplete, can we hope to stop the next Megan Huntsman before she creates her own garage full of secrets. The babies of Pleasant Grove deserve that much. They deserve to be more than a headline, more than a statistic, more than boxes in a garage. They deserve to be remembered, to matter, to make us all more vigilant, more compassionate, more aware of the desperate souls among us who teeter on the edge of unthinkable choices. What would you have done? More importantly, what will you do now that you know?